How's everybody doing today? So today I have a blast from the past for everybody. I'm playing Jeskai, Boomer Jeskai. Boomer Jeskai is in reference. This deck was kind of the core of it. Almost feels like it's from 2012-ish era. I used to play Magic back then, and just want to give it a try. I did make a couple changes I'll go over. If you don't want to sit around and listen to me ramble a little bit, I'll try and keep it short. Timestamps are down below for you. You can skip ahead to the games. Deck list is also down there for you. So real quick, 26 lands, control deck, need a lot of lands. I did make a couple changes from the list that I saw. They're running 2 Tech Edges and 1 Arena Glory to give your Flage haste. There aren't too many new cards in this, but Flage and Arena Glory was one of them. Arena Glory, it's cool, but you're only playing 2 Flages. We don't have a super great way to fill the graveyard other than normal interaction to ramp out a Flage. And Arena Glory, our mana is really stringent here. We have Path on 1, so we want white on 1. We want red on 1 for Bolt, and we want blue on 1 for Spell Snare. And then we want double blue for Counterspell, but we also want red-white for Lightning Helix. And then on turn 3, we want to be able to go Flage, Electrolyze, and then follow up with a Cryptic Command, which is 3 blue. So mana is kind of an issue. So Arena of Glory was cut, and I cut the 2 Tech Edges. Tech Edges, I just feel, is like completely unplayable. It's cute. I understand that's what we played back then, but it's just not playable. So I cut those, and I went up on a Hallowed Fountain. I think I went up on like a Glacial Fortress. I went up on dual lands, basically, is what I went up on. Getting into the spells, we're playing Path to Exile. This card was actually better than I thought. I know with power creep, you don't like giving your opponent more lands, right? But there's just something about, you'll see us pathing a Flage and then not having to worry about it ever again. And against, we didn't play it, but Boros Energy, just pathing a Flage and it's never coming back and they can't use that land. I'm not saying path is the correct spot right now, but it is phenomenal. Also, just pathing Primeval Titan. Yes, it gets them a land, but like the Titan's not there anymore, so you don't care. It's a super clean answer to it. And then we have Snap Capture Mages to bring them back, so you can literally run your Titan opponents out of Titans and things like that. Then we're playing 2 spells in there, 4 bolts. We're playing Remand. This is a true blast from the past for me. We used to play this back in Splinter Twin. Remand is a counter spell, but it's kind of different if you don't know. If you would counter the spell, it's not countered, it goes back into your opponent's hand and you draw a card. So it's like a tempo card that draws you more cards. For Snapcaster Mage, one of my favorite cards. Almost unplayable in today's standards, but Snapcaster Mage just has a special place in my heart, and I love to play it. We are on 3 Counterspell. So the only thing with Counterspell here is this was Mana Leak. We didn't have Counterspell back in the day. With that said, we have it now, and like I want to keep the heart of this deck the way it was back then, but at the same time, to me, Mana Leak is a counterspell. So I don't feel bad putting counterspell in the deck, right? Like we're gonna keep the rest of the core. You see, we still have Remands, we still have Pass. We'll see it a little later. We have Electrolyze, one of my other favorite cards, and we're playing Cryptic Command. So I feel like we kept the core and the feeling we're going for of playing Jeskai, but I wanted to at least have a small chance of winning. So we're on 3 counterspells, 3 Lightning Helix. We are on 2 Force Negations. There's only, as in newer cards, since like Modern Horizons, we have Force Negation and then 2 Flage. So we're on 2 Force Negations. You have to have some type of free spell if you're trying to play control. In Modern nowadays, I feel like they even have a chance. But like I said, we're keeping it real. Back in the day, we have Vidillion Click. Card is real bad. It just dies. It's 1 power. It used to be cool, 3/1 flying, but with Bowmaster, it's not too great. But it does come up, and we are playing it. Then we have 3 Electrolyze. I love Electrolyze. I wanted to play against Boros Energy so badly because they play 1/1s, and obviously they do play a 2/2 and stuff. But this against 1/1s has to be phenomenal. Dealing 2 damage divided by any targets that you want, and it draws you a card. And then we can flash it back with Snapcaster Mage. It feels phenomenal. Unfortunately, it never felt super great for us. I mean, it draws a card and deals 2 damage, but we never got to see its true power, unfortunately, in this league. Then we're on 2 Flages. Flages is a great card. Like I said, you gotta have something to like try and be competitive. And then my favorite one, I couldn't bring myself to cut it. It's cutesy, but I had to keep it. Restoration Angel, right? Restoration Angel, Flash Flying 3/4 Angel. When it comes in, you can blink a non-angel card. So obviously, when you bring this in, you're going to blink your Snapcaster Mages. So then you can play Restoration Angel, blink your Snapcaster Mage, target like a bolt or a counter spell, depending if you're applying pressure or if you're trying to counter stuff, and answer whatever you need to answer that way. Super cutesy. Fortunately, never really came up. I want to get super cutesy and run a Kiki Jiki. If you don't know, Kiki Jiki with Restoration Angel is basically like Splinter Twin. You tap the Kiki Jiki, make a copy of Restoration Angel. Restoration Angel comes in, blinks the Kiki Jiki, and infinite combo. You have infinite angels with haste. Too cute. Didn't play it, but it would have been awesome because you can also then make copies of your Snapcaster Mage to, bring back bolts or counter spells. But I didn't go that far. But I thought of it afterwards. I thought it'd be super cute. And then we have one Jace the Mind Sculptor. The original list played Ajani, 4-cost Ajani. The card's just, Ajani's unplayable. Jace is obviously on the fringe of unplayable in Modern even now. I felt like Jace is like a core blue control card, right? So I didn't feel bad making this swap, right? It's another change that I personally made, and it actually does come up, and Jace does win us a couple games. We do Fate Seal a person to death. We do ultimate a Jace against, I won't tell you the matchup, but it is phenomenal. We do get to live the dream, and we do Fate Seal someone and then ultimate it. And the game wasn't close until I resolved Jace. Like, we were going to lose until Jace came down and Fate Sealed us to victory. So anyway, Jace is here. Like I said, at 4 calls to Johnny is just kind of unplayable. So I needed something to at least try and give us a chance. 3 Cryptic Commands. Cryptic Command is a terrible card. 4 mana, and then you get Veil of Summered. It just, it's almost unplayable. Mystical Dispute is 1 mana on a counter. A 4-cost card is terrible, but it has some cool modes, so we're obviously going to play it. Getting in the sideboard real quick. I'll be super quick here. 2 Stony Silences. Great against artifacts. 2 Supreme Verdicts. If you take notice in the main, we have no sweepers. So if you play big creatures, we're kind of out of luck. We can't really answer it. I mean, we can go like Lightning Bolt and a Helix, or Lightning Bolt, Snapcaster, Lightning Bolt to answer a 6-power creature. And then we have 3 pass, obviously. But if you go real wide on this, we need a Supreme Verdict. 3 Consign to Memories. Consign to Memories kind of needed in like every deck nowadays for artifacts. 2 Wear Tears. Wear Tears come up. They are great. Being able to answer resolved enchantments and artifacts, super great. I almost would rather play more of this, almost like 1 more. And I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I think it should be Disenchant. After playing it, Disenchant does the exact same thing, but it's just 1 in 1 white. So like the terror part is 1 more expensive, but anyway, they do functionally the same thing. But I think Disenchant was a more played card back then. It would have been more at one point, but I didn't think about it. We have 1 Brotherhood Ends. Deals 3 damage, helps clear planeswalkers and creatures. It also helps destroy artifacts that cost 3 or less. 2 Obsidian Charmals. This card never really came up for us, unfortunately, but if you're playing against any type of ramp deck, like Tron or something like that, you can pop their lands. And 3 Relic of Progenitus. This card is what we played for Graveyard Height back then. We could also did Rest in Peace. Obviously, with us on Snapcaster Mage and Flage, we don't want to Rest in Peace ourselves. Relic felt awful. You'll see, we played a match where we were playing against an opponent that was super graveyard heavy, and we Relic pop on them twice, and it just didn't matter to them. We just got ran over. I don't know what I'd play in this spot. I think if you're playing something like this, you need something like Ghost Vacuum, where you can pick the cards that you're exiling. If we could have picked the cards our opponent were exiling and didn't have to pop our Relic, we would have stood a better chance. Unlicensed Hearse is 2 mana. It's a little expensive nowadays, Modern, but you can exile 2 cards of your choice. It'd also be another option. Surgical is also another option. I keep bringing that up. I know a lot of people don't like Surgical. It's card disadvantage. But Surgical does feel kind of good right now in the format. So anyway, that's the deck. Let's go ahead here and get into the games. Like I said, down below will be the deck list, and you can skip around to any games you want to see. We'll see you in the games. All right, here we are for game 1. We win the die roll here. We choose to go first. First hand was kind of middling, so we go ahead and mulligan, unfortunately down to 5. You'll find us trying to hit lands and spells is pretty rough. This isn't too terrible. We have a Path, a Snapcaster Mage, and a Cryptic. Hopefully we can get the Cryptic command, but we had a removal spell, Snapcaster Mage to get back, a Path to Exile, and a couple fetches. With the fetches, let me pause here. Just going pretty quick. So anyway, so we have a couple fetches here. We can obviously go get our Surveil lands. So anyway, our opponent goes turn 1 Rune Crab, so we're up against Mill. I go fetch. Unfortunately, there was no way we can play around this. Obviously, if you know you're against Mill, which we knew we were because of Crab, you would want to hold your fetch. Unfortunately, we didn't have anything. We were holding our fetch to play around. So we were going to get Archive trapped either way. Obviously, if I had like a Force Negation or a Counterspell in hand, I would try and hold off fetching for as long as possible. But it didn't work out. So then our opponent goes here and they fire off a Surgical Extraction. And the weirdest part is they go and hit our Restoration Angel, which I don't quite understand because we play 1 Restoration Angel. So luckily for us, they didn't hit anything of true value. They had milled over a bunch of stuff. If they had hit like our Snapcaster Mage, it would have got the Snapcaster Mage out of our hand and obviously hit the 2 that are left in deck. Same with Electrolyze, they hit that or hit Bolt or hit Counterspell. If they basically had hit any other card in our graveyard, they would have got more value out of hitting our Restoration Angel. But regardless, that's what our opponent picked. Obviously, they had no way to know that what our deck consists of. But, yeah. So we go here. Upkeep, we path the Rune Crab. Unfortunately, it gives them a land. Our opponent cycles a Fractured Sanity. We get milled. We're already down to 34 cards, unfortunately. Here I just pass. I'm holding up Snapcaster Mage. It may have been correct in hindsight to just go ahead here and fire off a Flage. Our opponent is Archive trapping us. So our opponent goes Tasha's Hideous Laughter, right? So our opponent hits us with a Tasha's Hideous Laughter. And mills 20 cards. Exiles 20 cards. So I want to fetch because statistically I don't want them to hit any of our fetchables. As you know, as the game goes on, you can't control what they hit. So I go ahead and fetch. And unfortunately, there's no way we could answer this card. So anyway, like I said, it's fetching. And then they have the second Archive Trap, which is just disgusting. Like our opponent just rolled us. So anyway, after these 2 cards resolve, Archive Trap resolves, and then Tasha's Hideous Laughter resolves, we have 2 cards in deck, and we can no longer win. Even if I could jam a Flage here, obviously we will deck before we can get anywhere. So super quick loss, game 1, but hopefully we can rally back here. See you back here for game 2. All right, here we are for game 2, round 1, game 2 against Blue Black Mill. Obviously, we choose to go first. First hand is completely unplayable. We had double relic, no lands. So now we have 2 lands, Lightning Bolt, Cryptic Command, Electrolyze, Jace the Mind Sculptor. I should show you sideboard quick here. So classic Mill. I don't think Mill's around as much as it used to be. So if you take note as our deck, we still have 63 cards in deck with 6 in hand. So we're at, I think, was that make us exactly 69 cards. So basically against Mill, I don't know if everyone does this, but basically you decide in a bunch of cards that are good, and then you don't take any cards out. Now it does mess up your land count, but since we play fetches with Surveils, I'm hoping we can find enough lands to make that relevant. But the idea is the more cards in your deck, the more milling they have to do, and the longer that you'll live. So anyway, as you see, I brought in a bunch of cards. The only cards I did not bring in is 2 Stony Silences. I left Charmall out, a Brotherhood End is out, and 2 Supreme Verdicts I left out. But the rest of the sideboard came in. So let's go ahead here and get into the games. Unfortunately, again, here, we can't really play around an Archive Trap, which is like the bane of my existence. So I'm not going to fetch here. I'm going to keep playing my lands. Hopefully we draw something like a Counterspell or something like that. So I can go ahead and fetch here. Unfortunately, we're starting to get to a point here where I don't have lands. I'm going to need to Surveil. Opponent fields around us. I go ahead here and float a blue. Go ahead here, get another blue. They go to Archive Trap us. I go Electrolyze, hoping to draw into a Force Negation. We draw into a Force Negation. We have a chance. I obviously also take the time to fetch again. And we get super lucky and we do hit the force negation off the electrolyze. So we're able to force their archive trap. They go surgical. They surgical away our electrolyze. I don't know why they'd hit electrolyze when you think you would hit force negation. Force negation is much more impactful for us. We managed to draw another force negation. We forced their Tasha's hideous laughter here. And then Poe's not doing a whole lot. So this is the choice we have here. Right? So this is a big decision point here. You'll see what I'm about to do. So we don't have a lot going on here, right? Our opponent has 4 cards in hand, and our hand does not look great. We could hold up Cryptic Command, but at some point we have to beat our opponent, right? So I go ahead here. I jam the Jace. I don't think we're winning a long game here against Mill, so I immediately start plussing. Idea here is we're going to try and plus an ultimate just Jace. Like I said, our hand has deteriorated. We don't have any Snapcasters. We can go Bolt, Snapcaster, Bolt, and then try and do stuff like that. So at this point, we're all in on this Jace. We get Tasha's Hideous Laughter again. We're down to 38 cards in deck. At this point, we keep plussing. Our opponent sees a Cryptic Incursion. Don't care about Cryptic Incursion. We let that go. Cryptic Incursion exiles all creatures from each player's graveyard, and they gain 3 life. My game plan here is to win with Jace. Jace doesn't care how much life you have. Our opponent then also goes and fires off a Visions from Beyond. Neither of us have 20 cards in our graveyard, so they're going to draw 1 card. I am holding up Cryptic Command. We also have up Consign to Memory. But again, I don't care about them drawing 1 card, as I'll just counter the 1 card they draw if it's actually good. So we're going to continue here holding up this Cryptic Command and trying to plus this Jace. This time I do see a Tasha's Hideous Laughter on top. I do put that on the bottom, so they do have an unknown card now. And they're not doing a whole lot here. We just keep plussing our Jace. We see a Fractured Sanity. We do put that on the bottom. And to turn, our opponent has yet another Archive Trap. At this point, I don't care because we're at 23 cards. I'm only going to counter a card if it's going to beat us. They go to hit us to mill 10. I do Cryptic Command here to target, counter, draw a card. They have Spell Pierce again. Cryptic Command is just terrible most of the time in the blue matchup. So we get Spell Pierce. At this point, we're down to 12 cards in hand. We plus our Jace one more time. We see an island on top. So if they can't answer this Jace here, we should get the ultimate here and win, assuming they don't have anything in hand that can mill us for 12. Our opponent goes Cryptic Incursion. Obviously, we don't care. Cool, they're at 23 life. Doesn't matter. And we ultimate the Jace. So this doesn't happen too often, but Jace ult wins. Our opponent has 2 cards in hand. So they exile their deck. Their hand becomes their library. So you have 2 cards left in deck to beat us with, and we know they're duds. And we win this thanks to Jace. So I'll see you back here for game 3 against Mill. All right, back here for round 1, game 3 against Blue Black Mill. As you see, we're still at 69 cards, quality number, and then we are finally on the draw against Mill. First hand here, we're going to keep it. We have counter spells and lands. Hopefully we can surveil into whatever else we need. It is worth noting we have force negation backup, so if they try and archive trap us at all. So I'm pretty much going to try and hold these lands as long as I can. Opponent goes Rune Crab, and then this game is quite hilarious. I started to tilt a little, I'm not going to lie. So this Palace in the Clouds, its ability is for 1, you can bounce it back to your hand. And obviously you can tap it, make the 1 mana, and then bounce it back to your hand. Which sounds terrible and modern until you have Rune Crabs and you don't have any other lands. When your hand is all Rune Crabs and you're stuck on 2 lands, but that 1 land turns on all your Rune Crabs, it's phenomenal. And I'm going to spoil a little bit here, but if you look at this hand here, we have no answers to Rune Crab. Mind you, we have 3 bolts, 4 bolts, 3 pests, 3 lightning helixes, and I think for the most part that's about it. So we have answers to Rune Crabs. But anyway, we're gonna get the beatdown of a lifetime with Rune Crabs. Not literally beat down, but milled out. So I end up go fetching here because we can't answer as Rune Crab, and we need to find an answer quick. Like I said, we have a bunch of outs to it, but we need to find the out. Our opponent does the little cute loop. Our opponent does mess up here. I don't know. well, we're gonna see here in a minute why our opponent did it this way. But they had played Rune Crab first, and then tried to do their loop. They would have milled for additional 3 cards. It ends up working out here, so I assume they had a plan. So anyway, we can't have another Rune Crab hit the table, so I go Counterspell. Our opponent has Spell Pierce, hence why they left it blue up. And at this point, our opponent's milling us for 6 cards a turn without doing anything. Like on board, they bounce their stuff and keep going. And at this point, I'm starting to get a little tilted because we're literally going to get milled out by Rune Crabs. So anyway, I go here, Fetch Shock. Again, we have Force Negation up. I fire off a Vidillion Click. Our opponent extirpates Cryptic Command, which was a reasonable hit. Luckily, we didn't have any in hand. So they hit the one in our graveyard, and they did take 2 cards out of deck, so it was a plus for them. This time, we go Vidillion Click. And as funny as it is, we Vidillion Click ourselves because we need to find answers to these crabs. So we start to beat down here with Vidillion Click. This is about as good as Vidillion Click looks all game. We finally hit the Flage. And the wildest part is if our opponent had just held on to Extirpate, they could have hit the Flage. If they had just held on to that, we would have been in a much worse spot. So our opponent has yet another crab. So this is the 4th crab. As you see there, they bounce their land, put it into play to mill us. Now they're milling us for 9 each turn with just this land. They're down to 1 card in hand, mind you, but we're getting milled for 9, and we're at 31 cards. As you saw there, I did go ahead and fire off it was a little quick there, Consign to Memory. I was trying to counter a Rune Crab trigger. What's the word I want to use here? Not the best use, but it's probably the only use. It would have saved us 3 cards, but our opponent had yet another Spell Pierce, so that didn't work. So we're down to 31 cards. With that said, though, we now have Flage in the yard, and we can cast said Flage. So we immediately Windmill Slam Flage onto the board, kill a crab. And at this point, it's just pretty much a race. So our opponent's down to 1 card in hand. They can mill us for 6 cards for sure next turn with what's on board. They hit a Field of Ruin, which is even worse for us. And then they hit us with a Tasha's Hideous Laughter. So Tasha's Hideous Laughter hits us. We're now down to 4 cards in deck. So we go ahead, get swinging. Our opponent actually chump blocked. And I'm not sure why they did that. So in hindsight, looking back on this, they shouldn't have chump block. Actually, looking back on this, they completely punted this game. I didn't take notice of this when they were playing, but if they had not chump blocked there, they went down to 4, and then Rune Crab by itself would have won board because they can bounce their Palace here. They activate Palace, mill us for 3. And then they replay Palace, even if they don't draw anything in return, and then they Field of Ruin us, which gets them another basic land, and they mill us for 3 more, putting us exactly 0 cards in deck, and we're actually dead. So that chump block was a complete pump by our opponent. I actually didn't take notice of that. I was taking the win. I was super tilted at the time because they had all those crabs and we didn't have answers. But yeah, if they had not chumped here, unless I'm missing something, they actually had the win. But anyway, we managed to pull this one out, and we did get a Jace ult. Jace Ultimate. Totally worth it. So anyway, I'll see you back here for round 2. All right, here we are for round 2, game 1. So we won the die roll, so I choose to go first. First hand is completely unplayable. We have both our basics and no castable spells. So we mulligan down to 6 here. Our opponent goes turn 1 Urza's Saga. So I'm not really sure what to think about that. Kind of odd. So we go ahead here, go surveilling, put our land into the graveyard. Urza's Saga turn 1 is just so weird to me. Because they're not really going to get any value off of it. Our opponent here goes and plays, what's this land called? Crumbling Vestige. So at this point, we kind of know it's going to be Titan. And then they Green Sun Zenith for 1. And I didn't think it was worth counterspelling. So they go get a Boreal Grazer and they put a Forest into play. This is a pretty, to me, I think it's mediocre. I don't think I would have kept a 7-card hand if I was a Titan player, which I am not. But the hand does seem to be a little slow. So here we go ahead and surveil again. We see a Spell Snare. Card's not super great in this matchup, so we put it in the bin. Our opponent floats a mana off their Saga. They go and get a Amulet of Vigor, and they do have a Simic Growth Chamber, so they can make a bunch of mana. Our opponent goes Green Sun Zenith for 3. Let's go ahead and remand here just to get another card draw. I'll go ahead and shock this in. They have another amulet, so now all their lands should be online now. Luckily for us, it doesn't look like they have another bounce land. I assume they're going to Green Sun Zenith again here for 3. I'll let them have it, as they're just going to go get a Dryad, obviously. Dryad's fine. We can either path it or double bolt it. I think I double bolt it here in a turn. I want to save this path for a Titan. So go ahead and do that, clear that. This Urza Saga, though, is going to be very problematic for us. We have no good way to clean up constructs if they decide to go do it. So opponent goes and jams a Primeval Titan. We jam a counterspell. Now at this point, we can hold up Path and Jace. So we're going to jam the Jace. And we're going to go Brainstorming. Play our land. Our opponent was not making constructs, which is super wild to me. I understand they have another Titan, but if they had known constructs, I think were a good way to pressure us, make us use our resources, and then jam a Titan. Like, I think they should have made constructs, been beating us down with constructs, make us have to use cards to answer the constructs, and then hold the Titan. But since they just go for Titan here with Amulet, we have Path to Exile, which is phenomenal against them, because they're not doing anything else here. Now, obviously, if they had a third Titan, we could have been in a problematic spot. Opponent goes and gets Teleria West. They go Spelunking. They use Teleria West to go get, I think they go get what a Pact. So they can go Pact for a Titan. So our opponent is going off now. Yeah, they go get Summoner's Pact, and they do not cast it here. So we draw, we hit a Force Negation because we had fetched away the top of our deck. So now they go Pact and Negation. I just go Force Negation. No reason to let them get a Titan. We obviously can't answer a Titan at this point. Again, if our opponent had made constructs, we'd be having a really hard time here. We fire off Electrolyze in a turn, just draw a card. Fortunately, we hit more lands. We Jace into more lands. So at this point, our shields are down. If they hit a Titan, it's probably the end of it for us. They're digging. Luckily for us, they don't find anything. We fetch away to make a perfect Brainstorm. We go Surveilling. We find a Snapcaster Mage. We keep it. Snapcaster Mage is a threat and also a counterspell. So at this point, we now start plussing Jace. Since we have Snapcaster Mage with counterspell with a Restoration Angel to target like a Force Negation, we are good. Now we just want to end the game. So end of turn here, I go ahead and flash in a Snapcaster Mage, and I was probably just going to fire off a Lightning Bolt into their Boreal Grazer to clock into play, and then we had a plus from Jace to keep Fate Sealing them. Our opponent decides to scoop it up. I assume their hand was pretty trash. As you saw, we had Fate Sealed a Lotus Bloom to the top. So yeah, so go ahead and concede it. We'll see you here for game 2. All right, here we are for round 2, game 2 against Primeval Titan. So here's the sideboard. We cut the Restoration Angel. Think it's a little too cute in this matchup. So we cut Restoration Angel, 3 Electrolyzes, 3 Lightning Helixes. The cards we brought in is we brought in 3 Consigned Memories. Consigned Memory lets us stop triggers. So I assume anything like Titan's ability. We can counter Titan's ability. We can counter just a bunch of different things. Then we also brought in 2 Wear Tears. Wear Tears are in here obviously to answer amulets. And then we brought in the Brotherhood End as well, as that answers their artifacts as well. So anyway, that's what we sideboard. Let's go ahead here and get into the game. So we had to mulligan to 6, as we always had to mulligan. Our opponent starts off the same way as last time, but they have an amulet turn 1, which is terrifying. We go surveilling, see a Flage. Flage is perfect to put into the graveyard. We can get it back later if needed. Opponent has a bounce land, goes exploring. So I play a Defense Grid, and let me pause here. I have to read the other card. So opponent plays a Defense Grid, so it costs 3 more to cast spells on each opponent's turn. It applies for them and us. And then this other card here, I hadn't seen this one before. This is whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell, sacrifice it, draw a card. So I assume our opponent thought maybe we were on Solitudes, which would make sense if we were playing a conventional Jeskai deck, but we don't have Solitudes, and this card here does nothing against us. And with this said, they are down to 3 cards in hand. So let's go ahead here and continue. The Defense Grid is really rough for us. Luckily, our opponent kept their hand based on the strength of the Defense Grid and stuff. We surveil, we find a Wear Tear, we go ahead and blow up the Defense Grid. Amulet of Vigor is terrifying, but since we have this path, we're not super scared of a Titan. So you just want to make sure we can interact on their turn. So our opponent here goes and sacks some lands. So I'm not a Titan player. I hadn't seen this play. They go Lotus Field. And then I guess they get the untap trigger and then tap it, and then they let it go. And then they play this creature here, Bellow of the Hollows, and it would bring back all their lands. You mill 4 cards and return all lands from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped, which would be great for them, but luckily for us, we have 1 more Consigned Memory, so we go ahead and counter it. So now it's just a 2/2. Our opponent's down to 2 cards in hand. They do have an Amulet, but it's looking pretty solid for us. We have a land, we have another Wear Tear, a Consign to stop triggers, and a Path. So far, this is looking phenomenal for us. So go ahead here, Wear Tear away the Amulet. Just don't want them doing too many shenanigans. We pass. They hit us for 2. Our life's a resource. Opponent goes Green Sun Zenith for 2. I let it go away. This card comes in. I'd never seen this card either. I let me pull it up here. Sorry. Moving a little too quick. So this card here comes in, mills 3 cards. You can pay 4, sacrifice it, return all lands from your graveyard to the battlefield. So as silly as it sounds, this card sounded more problematic to me than this little 3/3 is. We have lots of ways to answer this at its current power, if you want to call it that. So what I do here is I go ahead and just Path to Exile away the card that would get them back all their lands, as right now their bottleneck is lands. So here we draw a Celestial Colonnade. We go ahead here and jam Jace. We go ahead here and plus the 5. I see a Defense Grid. I do put that on the bottom. And then I plussed here, as I assume they couldn't get 2 cards into play to answer our Jace. So our Jace does survive. Our opponent does hit an Amulet. They play it. So now we draw a Path, which is perfect. So that answers the card in play. So we go ahead and Brainstorm here. We don't really need Force Negation here, so I'm going to fetch it away. Shifting Woodlands could be a problem, but luckily they don't have anything great in their graveyard, thanks to Path to Exile being such a great card. So go ahead here, go surveil land into our graveyard. Unfortunately, we're kind of flooding. Luckily, we have Jace. And we just keep doing Jace things, just brainstorm and fetch away. I do start getting a little aggressive here since we have a Path to Exile and a Flage in the yard. We go ahead here, bring back Flage. We just dome them as we can't answer their 4/4 creature. And at this point, we're pretty much set. I mean, we have Remand to counter something, Consign to Memory, and Path to Exile with an active Jace. This game's pretty much over. Opponent does have another Amulet. Shifting Woodlands isn't as great if you don't have anything great in a graveyard to copy. Opponent plays a Boreal Grazer. Then to go to pass, I'm pretty sure we Path to Exile their bear here end of turn. And apparently I lied because I'm still scared of a Titan, which I don't think we need to be worried about. I go ahead here and attack. I shoot their Boreal Grazers so they can't block. They go ahead and take it. So at this point, we're pretty good. In their upkeep, I go ahead and decide to Vidillion click them, see what they have. They didn't have anything of real value. They play a Boreal Grazer. I go ahead and counter it as it has reach, and we now have lethal on board. So, and just for the extra rubbins, we do path to exile their bear. So anyway, we countered the Boreal Grazer as next turn we had Celestial Colony to swing an air for 4, and then we obviously had Vidillion click here, and then we had 3 from Flage plus the 6 here, and then the path to exile. So anyway, this wasn't even a close game. Felt really good. Path to exile put in a lot of work. Consign to Memory also was fairly decent. So I'll see you back here for game 3 or round 3. All right, here we are for round 3. We do win the die roll. Our opening hand here, I don't keep. I do mulligan to 6. We do a lot of mulliganing. We do keep this hand. We have Lightning Bolt as removal, Cryptic Command if we can get there, and 2 Spell Snares. I'll go ahead here and put a Spell Snare back, as Spell Snare isn't always great. And our opponent activates a Chancellor. I had no idea what this card was. So Chancellor here says you may reel this card from your opening hand. If you do, at the beginning of your first upkeep, your opponent loses 3 and you gain 3 life. And then it's 7 mana for a 6/6 flying lifelink. I had never seen this card before, so I had no idea what I was up against, other than it was black. I was kind of thinking it was probably made like the rack or something. If you play more modern, you may know what this deck is. I had no idea, and I don't think this is a quintessential deck in modern. It ends up being mostly looking like blue-black. I did kind of mess up there. I could have spell snared there, but instead I go ahead here, go Lightning Bolt, and then fetch Surveil. I was hoping Spell Snare would have a better target. I thought maybe we were against the rack, but they go ahead here and play a Sorin instead, which was also a great target for Spell Snare. So at this point, we now have Cryptic Command up. Pardon me, Cryptic Command is now up, Lightning Bolt's up, and Vidillion clicks up. Our opponent does have a Cling to Dust, which will be a little problematic later on, as it'll answer our Flages in his card advantage. And then our opponent on their turn 4, they go for Necro Dominance. So we now know what they're kind of doing. They're going to try and use Necro Dominance. Luckily, you have a Cryptic Command to counter draw. About the best we ever get to see out of Cryptic Command. Fortunately, we are flooding here. And if you see our graveyard, we are surveilling. So in upkeep, since they don't have a counterspell, I go Vidillion click on our opponent. Let me pause here for you. Let me go back. So we go ahead here and Vidillion click on our opponent. And we see a Necro Dominance, a Dolthy, 2 Soul Spikes, and an Emperor Bones. So we go ahead here and take the Necro Dominance, as we have no answer to it. We probably lose. Unfortunately, our opponent is then Vidillion clicked into Orcish Bowmaster, which is a super easy, clean answer to our Vidillion click, which is a super bad feel bads. With that said, if we draw Electrolyze, we do have our own clean answer to Orcish Bowmaster. So again, we go Surveilling. And we see a Lightning Helix, which isn't what we're looking for at this point. We do manage to hit a Flage. We cast Flage. We kill the, pardon me, we kill the Orcish Bowmaster. At this point, it is worth noting that Cling to Dust in the graveyard. Cling to Dust flashes back for a total of 4, and our opponent is stuck on 3 mana. Our opponent goes Emperor Bones, so it is worth noting here. I have to bolt the Emperor Bones, as if I do not bolt Emperor Bones, they'll exile my Flage at the beginning of combat. Our opponent goes Beat Down for 1, and then luckily for us, unlucky for us, we draw another land, but we do get to bring back this Flage. So go ahead here, bring back our Flage. We leave Lightning Bolt and Lightning Helix in the graveyard, and we should have exiled the Arid Mesa as well to leave a Cryptic Command. Unfortunately, I misclicked, and I was having a hard time with Moto lag. Our opponent goes Dalthy Voidwalker, which is kind of funny. It's a little late. And it just kind of dies the Flage. So here I was trying to bluff for our opponent that we had something going on by not attacking with Celestial Colonnade. With that said, I probably should have just attacked with Celestial Colonnade. So I player land tapped, assuming maybe we hit Snapcaster Mage, and we need Cryptic Command or something. Unfortunately, our opponent hits the 3rd Necro Dominance. We've countered 1, we clicked 1, and then they drew 1. So unfortunately, this is not a great spot for us. So end of turn, our opponent goes and draws a literal ton of cards. So then to go ahead and Soul Spike us, we're now down to 12. And then our go to cleanup, our opponent passes to us. Unfortunately for us, we are just flooding out, so we're just going all in on this Celestial Colonnade beats. Don't expect it to get very far, but at the same time, the less life they have, the fewer cards they can draw with Necro Dominance. We really flooded out here. We did Surveil 3 times. Sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. So at this point, we're just hoping and praying for this Celestial Colonnade to get there. Opponent plays this 3-1 and exiles our graveyard, which is kind of unfortunate, but we didn't have any way to fill our graveyard anyway. Our opponent goes and draws, I think, 5 more cards with Necro Dominance, and then goes to clean up. With that said, they are down to 9, and now Celestial Colonnade is going to put them... these burn spells come up a lot, actually. So Celestial Colonnade here is going to attack. Going to put them down to 5. Lightning Helix puts them at 2. So they are starting to get into a problematic area. I do punt here, if you take notice, and do not leave up a red. Huge misplay on my part. Complete punt. Mistapped here. Should have left a red up, so I obviously could go Lightning Helix. I thought for sure it was 100% going to cost us this game. But as you see, we don't get punished. So our opponent goes Sorin, I'm sorry. And then he plays this card that I'd never seen before. As soon as it resolves, we'll look at it here. So I'd never seen this card before. It's cute with Sorin. Basically what it says, when you lose life for the first time, each time you get an energy, and then you can pay 2 energy, sacrifice it, gain 3 life, and I'm sorry. You sacrifice it, each opponent loses 3 life, and you gain life equal to the life your opponent lost this turn. So basically it's Lightning Helix, and it turns when they're Sorin Markov. So anyway, they pass back to us. So go ahead here, animate Colonnade. And at this point, they should be dead. So we're going to go ahead here, swing Colonnade, make sure we lead the red up so we can actually cast Lightning Helix, unlike we did last time. Go ahead here, swing them. And now we're in this weird holding pattern. Since they're going to take a damage, they'll have 2 energy, so they can use this ability to gain 3 life. But they do that, I'm going to Lightning Helix them. So our opponent goes to activate this to gain 3 life, to drain 3 life and gain 3 life, and then in response I Lightning Helix them to kill him. So kind of an odd situation there, but we did manage to pull it out. We'll see you back here for game 2. All right, here we are for round 3, game 2 against Mono Black. Sideboard wise, I cut 3 Path to Exiles. Most of their creatures look like they would die to our burn spells, so I didn't think they were needed. We cut 1 Snapcaster Mage. I'm not sure if our opponent has any graveyard hate. I'm not sure they're going to bring it in like Leyline of the Void, so I cut 1 Snapcaster Mage, 1 Flage, just to play it safe. And then I did cut a Vidillion Click. As you saw, it's just really terrible into somebody playing 4 Bowmasters. Cards I did bring in is kind of just some random cards that I brought in, to be honest. So I brought in 1 Consign to Memory. Then I brought in, obviously, both Wear Tears. And then we brought in 1 Supreme Verdict and then 2 Relic of Progenitus. So that's the sideboard. Let's go ahead here and get into the games. Wasn't really sure what to expect. As you saw, that first hand was completely awful. This hand here is also awful. With that said, I didn't want to mulligan too low. We do have a Cryptic Command if we can ever get there. This Relic will at least cycle at worst. We get lucky and draw into a counterspell. And then, as you can see, our real issue here is we are missing red mana. This was a little ambitious of me here to go ahead and counter the Orcish Bowmaster, as I could have jammed Necro Dominance. But since we don't have red mana, I was a little afraid that the Orcish Bowmaster would eventually just beat us down. So go ahead here, play the Relic. Our opponents are very aggressive with their Castle Lockwain, and they go ahead and just start instantly drawing cards. Now, mind you, that does activate their card enchantment there, so they can flip their Sorin. So that's a cute interaction. It was a little ambitious, though, for them, I think, to draw the Lockbane Castle here, but they did regain the life and then get to flip their Sorin. Their Sorin, goodness. I don't know why I keep mispronouncing that. And then they use Sorin's minus to dome us for some extra damage, so we are at 10. The only thing here is they put Sorin down to 2, which I'm not sure is the right play. If it was at 5, it'd be a little harder for us to remove. And we do get super lucky here, and we do rip a red source. So we are able to go ahead here, jam the Electrolyze, kill the Sorin, and draw a card. With that said, if they have Negro Dominance, we still are in a very tight spot. Luckily, they don't have it. They just have another enchantment, and they pass back. And at this point, we're pretty good to go. This is the best part about Jeskai, is our opponent is also going off, drawing more cards again. Jeskai gets to this spot where I have burn spells and Snapcaster Mages and counter spells. So end of turn, I'll start shooting off burn spells at you, and then flashing in Snapcaster Mages to bring back said burn spells and just keep the value going. And I'm obviously holding on counter spells during your entire turn. So super great place to be. We are at 5 life, super low. With that said, I'm not going to counter things too much. I don't want to waste counter spells on things like this unless I'm going to die. Just a cute trick here for you. It's pretty straightforward. But our opponent goes here and casts Inquisition, a Kozilek. So what I do is I flash in our Snapcaster Mage, as Inquisition takes a 3 or less, so they can't take Cryptic Command or Supreme Verdict, which we can hold up Cryptic Command here, and then their only choices are Electrolyze and Spell Snare. So we flash a Snapcaster Mage in, we target Electrolyze. So if our opponent doesn't play anything that we have to Cryptic Command, end of turn we can go ahead and Electrolyze. But playing the Snapcaster Mage gets it out of hand, gets you some value, and reduces the impact of Inquisition here. So they go ahead here, take our Spell Snare, and then they pass. So we go ahead here, fire off our Electrolyze. We do fetch down to 3, which was a problem. I thought we were actually going to die here. I did punts here. So the issue here is when we fetched, how to put this? We fetched and surveilled, which took us out of Cryptic Command. With that said, I want to fire off this Electrolyze to draw a card. With that said, the issue here is we lost to Bowmasters, and I was playing on the edge of if we go for this line or not, but since we had another Electrolyze in hand and we were firing one off, if they had Bowmasters, we were probably going to die either way. We just had to hope they didn't have it. The issue here, if you didn't take notice, is we are at 4, and their enchantment deals us 3, so Bowmaster would obviously deal us 1, and we would die. However, I don't play around this. I don't know. We probably could have a little bit, but I don't think the upside was worth it. Luckily, we are not punished, and now we are pretty set to go. So at this point, we're just going to do Snapcaster beatdowns. We have Counterspell, Electrolyze, and Cryptic Command. Our opponent gets super aggressive here and draws 3 cards. I apologize. They didn't draw 3 cards. They activated Castle Lock Vein there. And now they're down to 4. They go to Surgical or Electrolyze, so we fire off another Electrolyze since we had 1 in hand. And then we go Counterspell, and then our opponent goes Bogart Trawler to exile our graveyard. So at this point, our opponent is just dead to our Celestial Colonnade, and we go ahead here and Wear Tear to get them to sacrifice their card to gain 3, put us to 1. And then we get super lucky, and we draw a Flage and can still hold up Cryptic Command here. So we go Flage. Gain 3 life puts us at 4. Attack for 2. Then we pass holding up Cryptic Command. We are still dead to the a combination of Bowmasters and the free spell that they have that deals 4. So here I play it safe. We could have activated Colonnade and swung, but they had a Fatal Push, so luckily we didn't. So at this point, I just go ahead here and play Jace, and I start Fate Sealing them. Oh, I lied to you. Apparently, I decided to Brainstorm. I brainstormed thinking I could hit a land is what it was. I apologize. So our opponent goes down to 3 here, end of turn, and that was a terrible mistake. They died. They used that Castle Lock Vein, and they died by Castle Lock Vein. So I apologize. I played the Jace, hoping to Brainstorm into a land as a blue source, or any land actually. Let us hold up Cryptic Command on their turn, but we didn't hit it, and then our opponent used Castle Lock Vein, went down to 3, and then we Lightning Helix them. So our opponent was a little aggressive there with this castle. So they just kind of lost the burn spells. Anyway, see you back here for round 4. All right, here we are for round 4, game 1. We go ahead and do win the die roll, so we'll go first. And this is the first hand in a long time I felt like we could actually keep. We had lands and spells. We had a Path, Dillion Click, a Helix, and a Flage. Obviously, we would like a counterspell yet. Opponent starts off with a Preordain of a Spiral Bluff Canal. It is worth noting at first, I didn't know what we were up against. I thought we were up against Control, like a Control match. Spiral Bluff probably should have told me it wasn't, but it took me a little bit to catch on what we're up against. Opponent goes Preordain again, and it's worth noting our opponent was Preordaining and keeping a lot of stuff on top. Like I think they did 3 Preordains and kept everything on top, which is a little terrifying. We do draw a counterspell, which is nice. Go ahead here and shock in, so we can counterspell and Path to Exile. Opponent goes double mana Morphos. So go 3 Preordain and a double mana Morphos into a Faithless Looting. Alright, opponent's hand was pretty solid. Then I finally see it. They finally pitch an Arc like Phoenix, and we know what deck they're on. And they also obviously have this Demi-Lich. This ends up being a horrific matchup for us, by the way. Them just being able to reoccur stuff. We never find any Snapcaster mages, I don't think, in either of our games. So I go attacking here. I go ahead and Path to Exile the Phoenix, as I feel like that was the easiest card for them to keep reoccurring. These Demi-Liches are also problematic, so I go ahead and fire off a Lightning Helix at 1. Unfortunately, our opponent just has, which I guess is, I haven't seen Modern Phoenix. So the fact that they can just keep firing off things, like Thought Scouring things, to keep filling their graveyard was wild to me. Their card advantage is almost never ending, and they can just keep refilling their graveyard so fast. This is one of those games where like you almost need a Surgical or a Rest in Peace. So go ahead here, Flage, answer their Demi-Lich. The problem is the Demi-Liches are just going to keep coming back. So our opponent perpetually has 7 cards in hand, which is kind of rough. Not going to commentate a whole lot on this one. Our opponent has a surgical, or a flage. We kind of just get manhandled here. They go ahead and tar fire us. Then they play another Demi-Lich, get back an UR Pheonix swing. We finally draw a Snapcaster Mage. So go ahead and pass back, as we obviously don't want to cast anything on their turn and turn on their forced negations. So go ahead here, Snapcaster Mage, and we path to exile their Demi-Lich. So I go after the Demi-Lich as it lets them refill their graveyard quicker, as they can keep reflashing back a spell. Unfortunately, our opponent hardcasts a forced negation and counters it, and then has a gut shot of all things for our Snapcaster Mage. We go Lightning Helix on the Demi-Lich, which is only prolonging our problem. And their upkeep would go ahead here and Vidillion click them, see Force Negation, and Sink in the Stupor. Pretty sure we leave them with both of them. Draw a Lightning Bolt. As you can see, we're not in a very good spot here. I can't really race them, unfortunately. We don't have anything that interacts with their creatures that keep them dead permanently. Opponent plays a Fear of Missing Out. And then they have multiple considers. They are finally down to about 3 cards in hand, but we have depleted our resources. These Demi-Liches were a real problem for us. Opponent brings back Demi-Lich. Opponent goes swinging. I go ahead here and block. They're down to 3 cards. I'm kind of hoping they won't be able to reoccur it. With that in mind, we go ahead here and kill a Demi-Lich. Since they're down to 3 cards, I was hoping they wouldn't be able to reoccur their Phoenixes very easily. Go ahead here, play a Jace. They have yet a Force Negation. So 3 cards in hand, they had a Force with a pitch, which was wild to me. And then on top of that, they have yet, they draw into another Arc-like Phoenix to hardcast here. And obviously with Fear Missing Out, giving an extra combat step, that will be the game. And I apologize, apparently they did not have Delirium. But we go ahead here, draw a Force Negation, which does nothing for us. So anyway, I'll see you back here for game 2. Hopefully it goes a little better. Alright, here we are against Blue-Red Phoenix. And our sideboard here, we went ahead and cut the Cryptic Commands. Obviously, completely terrible card when you know they're going to play like Mystical Dispute and things like that. 4 mana is just too much. I cut 2 Spell Snares. They do hit some cards, but nothing I truly care about, like Metamorphosis, whatever. Cut 1 Vidillion Click. Cards we did bring in, we brought in 2 Consigned Memories. We brought in 3 Relic of Progenitus and 1 Supreme Verdict. I probably could have brought multiple Supreme Verdicts, but they're reoccurring their creatures so much that it clears it for a turn, but unless we have a Relic active, they're just going to reoccur their creatures. This matchup is pretty terrible for us. I go ahead here and mulligan our first hand, trying to look for some interaction as we need it. We do find a turn 1 Relic of Progenitus. Go ahead here and just Windmill Slam it into play turn 1. Opponent goes turn 1 Preordain. We go ahead, play a land, pass, holding up Counterspell. Our opponent passes back to us. Opponent goes Faithless Looting. I go Counterspell, hoping that might be their only type of discard outlet. Unfortunately, they have yet another Faithless Looting. Our opponent seems to be good at drawing multiples. They pitch 2 Arc-like Phoenixes yet. So we instantly have to go pop a Relic here. So we do draw a card. It's another Relic, and 2 Arc-like Phoenixes are gone. And then they follow up by playing a Demi-Lich. So we go ahead here, play another Relic, and we path their Demi-Lich. Then we go Surveilling, see a Remand, put it back in the graveyard. Our opponent goes Consider, finds their 3rd Arc-like Phoenix, which is kind of wild. In the top 18 cards of their deck. They find their 3rd Faithless Looting as well. And then, yeah, our opponent just kind of has it all at this point. So they're going to go ahead here, get back their Arc-like Phoenix. We go ahead and pop Relic. Go ahead here, jam Jace. We bounce their card back to their hand, their FOMO. And unfortunately, as everything else, our opponent has, if you can't tell, I was a little tilted. Our opponent has the 4th Arc-like Phoenix, right? So to recap on this, that's 3 Arc-like Phoenixes. And then they also had their double Demi-Lich, right? And then they had to have double Faithless Looting. I'm sorry, triple Faithless Looting. So our opponents kind of had it all here. The idea here is we bounce the FOMO back to their hand, and then we would play Jace. They wouldn't obviously hopefully have a way to answer it, and then we would start brainstorming. Unfortunately, our opponent has the 4th Arclight Phoenix in the top like 20 cards of their deck. So they kill our Jace. And at this point, I mean, it's not feeling terrible as we have Snapcaster Path and we have Lightning Helix. But as wild as it is, our opponent has drawn so well that 2 relics haven't done anything. And then they proceed to find yet another Preordain and then into a Consider to just keep on rolling. And then they find another Preordain. And then they play their FOMO, which gets back to Arclight Phoenix. And at this point, it's just kind of wild, right? Like, I don't know there's anything I could have did when you see all that in the top half of your deck. I understand our opponent's deck obviously draws a lot of cards, but I feel like statistically, the number of cards that they saw specifically were kind of wild. So our opponent's going off here. As you can see, they're already up to, 11 cards in graveyard after we relic them twice. So not a whole lot we can do here. For our graveyard, we have a whole whopping Lightning Helix with a Snapcaster Mage. So we go ahead here, go Snapcaster Mage, target the Lightning Helix. We're doing this with the FOMO's trigger on the stack targeting the Lightning Helix. Draw a Lightning Bolt. Opponent has 2 cards in hand. We go attacking as we're obviously not blocking. We Lightning Helix the FOMO. And we pass back. We're hoping our opponent can't keep going off. But they obviously have Faithless Looting to flashback, which really helps. We do find a Flage, so we're hoping there's a small chance that we can pull out of this somehow. It is worth noting, I do punt here a little bit. I didn't think that we had 5 cards in graveyard for some reason. I don't know how I miscounted this. It is worth noting our opponent is down to 4 minutes in time, and we were still at 13 minutes. Our opponent was slow rolling us. So the correct play there is I should have obviously brought back the Flage immediately, and completely my fault. And I continue to miss this punt. So I think we actually would have won this game, but unfortunately, like I said, I had sat around for a very long time waiting for this opponent, not trying to make excuses for my terrible plays. It was definitely a punt on my part. But like I said, my opponent was gone for well over almost 15 minutes, and it was quite rude. So at this point, we still have Flage, which I should have cast many, many times over. And our opponent is just going to town here. Again, I completely missed the Flage. And it's at this point I finally realized my mistake. I go ahead and bring back Flage. Unfortunately, the times that I missed bring back this Flage do end up costing us in the end. So I bring back a Flage, kill their 1 creature. I play the other Flage, Legend Rule it, keep the one that we had escaped, clear their board, and swing for 2. and then they end up having the surgical extraction. So they're able to kill our Flage and then have the surgical for our Flage. So again, would we have won? I'm not sure, but definitely did not help because our opponent probably would have been dead if they were at a lower life total. Then our opponent's able to answer a Snapcaster Mage, gets a Demi Lich back, gets an Arc-like Phoenix back. And at this point, we're pretty much dead. At this point, we need to rip another Bolt, another Snapcaster Mage, another Lightning Helix, or even an Electrolyze would do it for us. Any burn spell here, we can go Lightning Helix their face, and another burn spell would win us the game. Our opponent's just using Demi Lich's ability here to cast more spells like Preordain and get more card advantage. And to turn us, go ahead and fire off the Lightning Helix here. Opponent has the Force Negation. And we draw land, and we're pretty much out of it at this point. Go ahead here and pass back. Our opponent goes Tarfire, target us, deals us 2. Then they're going to attack us for 7, and then they're going to flash back to Tarfire to deal us 2 more for lethal. And our opponent was down to the last like 30 seconds of their clock. So anyway, again, completely on me there. I should have brought back the Flage earlier. Not 100% sure we would have won, but probably would have definitely been close. To be honest, we probably would have beat them in time then. But as you can see, this matchup doesn't feel super great for us. And I'm not sure if we would have actually won game 3. But anyway, I'll be back for round 5. All right, here we are for round 5, game 1. We did lose a die roll. You're able to keep our hand. We have Remand into Path to Exile with multiple Surveillance. We're probably up against one of the best decks in the format in Temur Breach. Our opponent goes Turmoil Mox Opal into Mishra's Bauble into Surveil Land. So not a whole lot we can do here. Just have to pass. Opponent's just doing their thing. We see a Flage. We put the Flage into the yard. We do find a Snapcaster Mage, which is nice if we get a chance to get to Remand and such. Opponent goes Grinding Station. I go ahead here and remand the Grinding Station. Unfortunately, find another path. Path is not a great thing for us here. And then they go ahead and take the opportunity to sack their Scion to get their Grinding Station into play. Unfortunately, once that's resolved, there's not much we can do. Go ahead here, Surveil, find a land, put it into the graveyard, and it's pretty much over already. They go ahead here and go Breach. And then from here, they just do the combo with Breach, Grinding Station, and then Opals. So anyway, I won't make you sit here. It felt pretty terrible. You'll see game 2 doesn't feel much better, but we'll get into that. So I'll see you back here for game 2. All right, here we are for round 5, game 2. We're up against Temur Breach. I thought our sideboard was pretty strong for against this matchup. Unfortunately, as you're going to see, we never see any sideboard cards. But for sideboard-wise, we got 3 Cryptic Commands. Again, pretty bad to have a 4-mana counterspell against people who can play Mystical Dispute. Remand doesn't do a whole lot. Their deck's very cheap, right? So, like, Remand, cool, I'm putting the 0 cost or 2 cost card back into your hand. It's not fixing the problem. We cut that. Cut 3 Electrolyzes. Card's cute, but not where we want to be. And I cut 1 Flage. Flage questionable, but we're running Relics. So I don't know how long we'll be able to keep him around. So cards we brought in, obviously, we brought in 3 Consign. Great against pretty much their entire deck. We brought in 2 Stony Silences, which I thought would have been phenomenal here, right? Like, Stony Silence just, like, pretty much shuts down their deck. 2 Wear Tears, obviously, another great card. Brotherhood's End is also another great card. You could make maybe an argument for maybe something like Obsidian Charmal or something, maybe, but didn't bring them in. But anyway, the big key ones here are Stony Silences, Brotherhood's End, and Consign to Memory. Obviously, like I said, we have Relics for the graveyard and Wear Tears. Unfortunately, here you're going to see, as we get into the game, I mulliganed fairly aggressively, as you saw game one. It's pretty rough for us. We did have a relic there, didn't work, so I'm down to 5. I was really trying to find any Stony Silence or anything. We don't find it. So we have a counterspell, Lightning Helix, Vidalian Click, pretty trash hand. I don't expect a whole lot. Our opponent does have Haywire Might, so even if we had found our Stony Silence, they did have a Haywire Might to answer it. So go ahead here, play land. So the issue here is we don't want to play Relic, obviously, into a Haywire Might. We go ahead and counter their Rumble. So we go ahead and pass back here. We're holding up Spell Snare and Lightning Helix. If our opponent doesn't do anything, we'll Lightning Helix to Haywire Might and then get our Relic of Progenitus down is the idea. Go ahead here, Lightning Helix. Now the other problem we're going to run into here, as you see, is with Urza Saga, them just making tokens is going to be a problem for this deck. We don't play Dress Down, we don't play EEs. I did bring in Supreme Verdicts, but we do have Brotherhood's End as our out in this situation. So knowing that, I go ahead here and surveil, getting with another red source, so we have double red for Brotherhood Ends. I go ahead here and I have to pop our relic. Our opponent puts an Emery into play. We don't have an answer to Emery. So they're just going to get all the value off this. Unfortunately, our hands is kind of clogged up with Vidalian Click, Consigned Memories, and Spell Snares. It's kind of funny. We go ahead and Vidalian Click. Our opponent fires off a Veil of Summer, but we're targeting ourselves. Vidalian Click. We click ourselves, trying to find Brotherhood's End. Unfortunately, we do not find it here. So at this point, we just have to chump. Our opponent finds another Urza Saga. And it's pretty much over at this point. Our opponent go ahead and plays a Grinding Station. We can sign a memory, but at this point, the battle's not even about the combo anymore. It's about what's on board. So go ahead here, chump block, and we have one draw at our out. And we draw a land for turn, so that's all there is. So unfortunately, this game here didn't feel great either way. Obviously, the matchup we're playing into here, Temur Breach, is just a phenomenal deck at what it does, right? And then the fact we didn't see any of our pieces wasn't great. So with that said, I think it's a rough matchup either way. But I think if we had seen any of our sideboard cards, it would have been a lot more possible or doable. With that said, this is Jeskai Boomer. And I just think it was a fun list to play. I wouldn't, take it to any large events. But for fun, I think I had a fun time playing it. So thanks for stopping in and checking it out.